everybody. Welcome to another Toy Guys Talking, and great pleasure to have on Toy Guys Talking Captain Stewart from Trekyards. You're just an hour down the road from me in London, Ontario. So it's awesome to be talking to another Trek fan as well as another fellow Southern Ontarian. It's been a little tricky to get you on here. It's almost like scheduling William Shatner and Patrick Stewart on the same day in the same scene. Hopefully our outing goes a little better than theirs did.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on here, first of all, and to finally chat with you in person. I know we've been talking via I contacted you quite a while ago, probably 2 years ago, and I was impressed because I've been watching your channel, and I was impressed that you were actually close by. So I thought, hey, us YouTubers that live in this area should stick together. So I'm glad we finally got a chance to talk. But thank you for lumping me in with William Shatner and Patrick Stewart. I like that. I like that.
Well, that's high company and low company. It used to be obvious who was the high and low, but I think after Picard,
oh yeah, don't get me started.
It might be reversed.
Yeah.
Man, I want to talk about Trek collecting with you because there isn't a lot of Trek collecting talk going on, and your channel Trekyards specializes in Star Trek, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. Because I know you're into lots of stuff, not just Star Trek. I got a message a while back from Jason Swank over on Rebel Force Radio, and he's into everything. He's not just a Star Wars guy. But I guess we'll start off with Trek because that's what a lot of people know you for and love to chat with you on Trekyards about. With Trek, I'm actually just curious, when did you first get into Trek, and was it just strictly a show thing or a collecting thing too?
Well, that's a question I get all the time. When did I start with Trek? And I have two older brothers, and the thing is, Trek has always been in my life. I don't remember the first time that I watched a Star Trek. I don't remember what it was. My oldest brother's 10 years older than me, and my other brother's 7 years older than me. So there's a big gap between us. And so they were Star Trek fans, and I just grew up watching it since I was a baby, I guess, because I was born in 1974. And, it's just always been there. As for collecting, it's the same thing. My brothers had the Explorer kit, the phaser and tricorder and stuff, the model kit you could make. Yeah, so that's kind of before Star Trek toys were a thing. So I used to always play with their stuff, much to their chagrin. I probably broke a bunch of their stuff as well. And then just growing up. What's that?
Did you have the Mego Trek stuff?
Yeah, they had the Mego. My brother Sean or Steve, I think Steve actually had the Mego bridge, and they had almost all the Mego characters. So yeah, that kind of stuff they kept a little more guarded than some of their other stuff, but I remember playing with some of the stuff kind of without their permission. So
did all the accessories survive? Because I've been kind of trying to hunt down some vintage Trek Mego stuff, and it's a little harder to get them with their phasers and their belts intact and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my brother Steve has most of his stuff. He was pretty methodical about keeping that stuff together. It's just kind of what he does. So yeah, I think he's got most of the accessories, if not all.
Now, one of the questions I keep getting asked, and to me it's such a non-factor, I can't believe it's as big a discussion as it is, reproductions, repros. I keep getting asked like it's this big important topic, and I'm usually very short with my response, like, yeah, go for it. Repro everything. Repro the damn world. Have a second Earth right beside us made in plastic. I don't care. Repro everything. And so I've seen actually at one of my local shows, I don't know if you've ever gotten out to the Binghamans toy show there in Kitchener, but it's pretty good. And one time they had some vintage Mego Trek stuff there. I think it was repro parts like belts and phasers and communicators and stuff. How do you feel about that? Does it have to be pure, the original, or is plastic?
It's plastic. I've been to the Binghamans toy show once, and but no, as far as repros go, I have no issues with them at all. I actually have a bunch of repro stuff right now because I don't have the money to get the vintage stuff. If I find it,
guilty.
Yeah, exactly. If I find it, I find it, but it's not a necessity, and I don't think people are flooding the market with it. There's obvious things on them that indicate that they're repros. So, as long as you know what you're looking for and that you're not trying to deceive anybody, I think making repros is the way to go.
Yeah, I think the whole counterfeit thing is blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
How many people on the planet are in danger of getting ripped off, of paying way too much for a vintage communicator Amigo thing, or I always go to Dusty's, FAMAS and bipod. Like, come on, how many people on the planet just took a bath on a bipod because they thought it was a vintage bipod, but it's actually a Marauder Gunrunner's bipod? It's not as big an issue.
Yeah.
That goes for a lot of things in this world, things that aren't big issues being, molehills being turned into mountains. But
Absolutely.
I like, plastic is plastic. That's my philosophy, and it's not jewelry, it's not fine china.
Yeah, exactly. Well, some people do take a pretty big bath on some of that vintage stuff, though, and it's very personal to them that they get the vintage stuff. But yeah, it's not as widespread as I think it's made out to be, for sure.
Yeah. So original Trek you grew up on, was it TOS?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I remember when TNG came out, and it's like, oh, they're gonna have a French captain, and it's so far in the future. Do they even need a ship? Can they hit this transport planet to planet? See, I predicted JJ before JJ did.
Yeah. Why don't they just use the belts they used on the animated series? Why do they even need a ship?
The life support belts, yeah.
Isn't that cool. Amazing how that was a budget saving thing, and it turned out to be, oh, that's actually a pretty cool idea there.
Yeah.
But who's your favorite TOS character? I'm not going to ask you who's your favorite Trek character ever, because that's like asking me who's your favorite toy in the toy room. Like, good luck. But your favorite TOS character?
Well, but just before I answer that, though, I get asked that all the time. What's your favorite episode? What's your favorite ship? It's too hard. You can't. It depends on the day, the mood sometimes, but overall, there's
like
just
your kids.
Well, yeah, I do have a favorite. No, I'm just kidding. No, my favorite TOS character is going to be hands down Kirk. If it's just confined to TOS, Kirk is the man that I always wanted to be. So
it's hard for me to pick one. I love Kirk for the exact same reasons everyone does. I love Spock for the same reasons everyone does. I love Bones for many of the same reasons, and some of the reasons I think a lot of people don't say. Like, I just love how Bones is a debutante. Have you ever noticed that about him? He's such a Southern belle, and not in like an effeminate androgynous way. He has all of the class and the poise of a debutante in this like crusty space doctor. And I love how he reacts to everything on that show.
Yeah. And the thing is, they tried to duplicate him in season 2 of TNG with Pulaski, and it just did not work. It didn't work at all. They tried to make a female version of McCoy, and it just didn't come off well.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. She was like crusty and curmudgeon-y, and she illustrates that fine line. Like all of these factors of this shouldn't work, but somehow DeForest Kelley, the late great DeForest Kelley, somehow made it work, and so many great actors somehow make it work.
Yeah.
And then you give basically the same role to someone else, and you go, why am I not, getting into this? And luckily they brought Beverly Crusher back. But do you remember what you thought of TNG when it first came out?
Like I said, I remember more of the build up to it coming out with the articles. This is not my Kirk and Spock. This is not my Star Trek. I won't watch it. All that stuff. The controversy, which wasn't as amplified because there was no internet, but it was still there. It's still the same stuff we hear today with New Trek. As for the shows themselves, there's a few that stick out in my mind that I can remember watching in the living room with my family. But overall, I've just seen them so much over the years that it kind of all gets, lost in the sea of memories. So yeah, I don't remember the first initial reactions. Although that being said, we are reviewing TNG right now on our channel, and we're in season 4. And there's this odd time where we're talking about an episode, and I'll remember, my first initial reactions, and it's actually bringing back some old memories, which is really great.
So we're on to TNG now, and I wanted to talk about toys because this is Toy Guys talking. You don't get to talk about toys much on Trekyards. So the Mego stuff with TOS, it was there, but it wasn't really like the huge thing. The big thing was the show, and then everything else was kind of peripheral. But when TNG came out, that's when Playmates, first there was the Galoob figures, which if you want to talk about that for a minute, I kind of like them. I like G.I. Joe sized figures, but they have their shortcomings. But then the Playmate stuff exploded, and they took the George Lucas approach of, if they have 1 second of screen time, they get a figure. So did you ever get any of the Playmate stuff?
I had a few of the Playmates figures, not very many growing up. As for Galoob, I didn't have any of those. I do like that size though. But Playmates, sorry about the dogs, by the way.
Oh, no problem. I got a couple
Stop.
myself.
I should stop in a second.
Oh, I'm actually drinking from a. There you go. And on the other side, I'm proud to be a dog mom right there.
We got a pug and a chihuahua, so you can imagine.
Are they named after Star Trek characters?
No. The pug's Precious, and the chihuahua's name is Dot. So.
Come on, Tiberius, man.
My brother does that. He names all his dogs after Star Trek characters. But no, the Playmates, I never really got into a lot of the figures per se. I was more, as you can tell with Trekyards, Trekyards focuses on the ships and the tech. I was more of a ships kind of guy. When I went to conventions, I would want to get little ship models or a shirt with a ship on it as opposed to an actual character. So I had a lot of the Playmates ships, but not so many of the figures. I wasn't really into the action figure collecting. Now, though, I have picked up a lot of the Playmates figures just at like flea markets, like the Gibraltar here in London. Go on the weekends sometimes and pick up some old figures and stuff like that. So I've got into them a bit lately, and I have a lot of them. So,
as a youngster, I wondered, because I watched a bit of TNG myself. Made sure there were no Star Wars fans nearby, because it's. Wow, how times have changed, eh? Like,
yeah,
it used to be Marvel or DC, Nintendo or Sega, Star Wars or Star Trek. You don't dare cross the streams. And I loved Star Wars, but I liked Star Trek too. And I think a big reason I liked Star Trek is because I loved Star Wars so much and there wasn't enough of it. Mm-hmm. Like, there was only the 3 movies, and then you couldn't get droids or Ewoks anywhere. Not that you'd even want to watch that again. The comics weren't that prevalent in the 90s, but TNG was close enough. It was in space. It was intelligent. It had the fun and optimism of Star Wars back then, anyway. Mm-hmm. But one thing I wondered was, and I admired the toys, but I never picked a single one up because I thought, how do you play with a Star Trek toy in the 90s? What do you do? Like, do you just literally raise your Picard's arm and go, make it so, we're going to investigate, and then some danger possibly comes along, but then they talk it all out, right? We're going to handle this civilly and reach a decision. And, the great thing about Star Trek toys probably in the 90s was you get your figures of the crew, that awesome bridge play set maybe, and then you don't even have to buy the villains. Like, you can just literally put a sponge like on the bridge, and that can be like a villain or a poof from a shower poof. It just kind of
or a Star Wars figure,
oh yeah, that too. Yeah, crossover universe. But I wondered, like, how do you play with Star Trek toys?
Well, that's why I like the ships.
Yeah,
you have ship battles. You have the ship like cruising by. You get the different beauty shots of it. That's one of the things that I find is you can like a ship or not like a ship, but then once you hold it in your hand like a model or a figure or a collectible of it, you get a new appreciation for it. Like I used to hate the Enterprise C, the Ambassador class. It used like, ew, no, not my thing. Then I built the model. Now it's one of my favorite Star Trek ships, because to see it from different angles and actually get a feel for it, and that's one of the things I liked about the ships is you could have these like. I still do it now. I still play with them the same way. But the figures, for Star Trek, that's why I never collected them. I did have a ton of Star Wars figures. That was more fun, more of a fun universe to get into for play value. But I just really appreciate the Star Trek ships. Mm-hmm. And again, when you see the ship, it's usually something cool going on, right? So I think playing with the ships is easier than the figures.
Are we ever going to get any more of those amazing Diamond Select ships with the not just the great paint job, but the electronic lights and sounds?
We're supposed to. They've been teasing a Reliant for like 5 years now. And there's a few other things. Enterprise C, the Ambassador class, they had the gold one at San Diego Comic-Con, which I managed to get my hands on. But hopefully they'll release that as, a regular painted model. But I honestly don't know, because the Reliant's been like 5 or 6 years now.
I'm hoping for a Voyager, especially because my wife loves Voyager too, and that one's like, I don't know why Voyager doesn't get more love than it does. It's really, I thought, it's not TNG, but what is? I mean, nothing is, and I liked Voyager way better than Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine. I want to ask you about the Defiant. I remember when they unveiled that on the show, and I'd heard from so many fans, "Oh man, the Defiant! Wait till you see Cisco in the Defiant." And then they talk this thing up so much, like this is the state of the BA art. You know, you do not want to mess with this. Independently targeting particle beam phalanx. What? Like it's the Hudson line from Alien, right? This is, you know, it's the Borg destroyer. And then it gets crippled. Like, was it within minutes of its debut on the show? And I'm sitting here going, what? What?
Funny you mentioned that. I got the Playmates one here.
Yeah.
No. To be honest, when the Defiant
is that cripple damage, space blast damage from getting spanked in that episode?
No, it's not. This is like,
can you does it come with spank action that it smokes and like fire billows out of it?
There, right? Alert.
Oh man.
Yeah. So stop. Anyway. Oh, is it frozen?
It's gonna blow up. Run.
Yeah, the Defiant was never the Defiant was never one of my favorites, to be honest. It's very much a non-Starfleet looking ship. I never really had appreciation for it till maybe a few years ago, and even now it's still very low on my list of ships. But it was designed to be tough, compact, and take on things that the other ships couldn't. And it was designed specifically to beat the Borg. So
I want to love it. And it just, everything about the Defiant feels off to me. Like after a while, I started to feel like, this show is Deep Space Nine. This isn't Star Trek Defiant. Like I don't like that it's taking, even though it's a wreck of a space station, it's still about the space station. So don't bring in this shiny new toy that actually sucks. They sure built it up well, but in actual execution, it does not do much. And then in that movie, it got totally crippled, and they wanted to blow it up in the movie, and
they're gonna ram it. Yeah,
right. And so you got the TV writers talking with the movie writers, going, "Please don't do that." Why? Because it's sort of important on our show. Like, how does that even happen? Like, how does a movie crew get so oblivious to what another department is doing? You think they would work hand in hand instead of, I don't care.
Well, Trek was not too bad for that. They did kind of pay attention to what was going on outside of their purview. But yeah, I mean, that just happens. Just different writers, different showrunners that have their own ideas. And it's very prevalent these days, actually, more so than back then. Because on Trekyards, we actually get to talk to the people that were behind the scenes, like Rick Sternbach, Doug Drexler, John Eves, the guys that designed these ships, designed the props, worked behind the scenes. And so we get all the inside little stories and stuff of what actually happened. And it's surprising. A lot of things are just about to be filmed or approved, and all of a sudden it'll be stepped in going, no, that doesn't make any sense when you look at this. And then there was that sense of canon and continuity behind the scenes that really translated to the screen. And unfortunately, that's not really there anymore. So
yeah, I know the Lucasfilm, what is it, the film group or something at Lucasfilm, they've created a department to try to do that, so that everyone has to check with those guys to make sure everything is copacetic and cohesive. Great in theory. I'm sure that makes sense, right? So they've basically it's a team of George Lucas's, right?
Yeah.
Instead of having George themselves, they just asked the team. Great in theory, but just now that we're a few years into this, it's starting to feel like, we're losing something because of the constraints of canon and continuity. Like maybe we could have had something cool happen, but the continuity group says no, because there was a Rebels or a Star Wars Clone Wars episode in season 2 that mentioned this for 2 seconds, and like, well, that would have been a cool way to go, but defying continuity is heresy these days. So are we actually sacrificing good shows and good movies because of one line of dialogue? Well,
yeah. I mean, it's kind of the opposite way with Star Trek, though. They are totally throwing the canon out the window and shoehorning shows into timelines that they don't fit there, and the things that are happening don't make sense. So it's the exact opposite problem, right? Like, we want some continuity. We want some adhesion to that. It's a universe. It's a universe. Shouldn't have to be explained in the universe because you have this rich universe. Just make a show in the universe. You don't have to explain it all to us because we're there. We're with you. Just start with what you have.
And Trek is so rich. It was so different than any other show. It wasn't just fantasy and adventure. It was like almost an encyclopedia that you watch, history unfolding. And it's just staggering how much they've thrown out the window. Like there's thrown out a little bit. I'll use Frasier as an example. There's a Cheers episode where Frasier is talking about his father in the past tense, and Sammy goes, "Oh, did your father die?" And Frasier has some zinger. No, yes, of course he's dead, Sam. So that was like one line in a season 3 or 4 episode. When it came time to do the Frasier show, they just said, well, we want his father as a character, so he's going to be in the show. And I think they mentioned that maybe when Sam does a guest spot on the show, and he's like, didn't you tell me? It's such a throwaway line that no one would remember, but it's in there. And they explained it as Frasier just saying, well, I was mad at you, Dad. And so, yeah, you were dead to me that weekend. Like, cool. We got how many? 11 seasons of Martin Crane. And we got that because they just decided it's just a line. Get over it. So let's just let it go. And, with Trek, I'm fine with just overlooking a line, maybe even a movie. Cybok, I can do without Cybok. I think a lot of people could. But to throw it all out, like I don't know. I have a feeling I know what you think of a lot of the new Trek, but it just where's the history? Where's the legend of everything? It's just all been thrown out. And they feel like they can just wipe everything out because of what happened in the first JJ movie.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, if they had jumped in saying, "Hey, Discovery is its own universe. It's the Discoverse. It either happened in the Kelvin universe, which is JJ's, or its own thing," we would have been like, "You guys did a fantastic job. Great job." You get criticized a lot more by doing that, but they want to insist that it's Prime, and that's worrisome. So,
yeah. I thought JJ did it wonderfully, like a blending of a reboot and an original. Like, I think that to me that's Spock's send off. That's the perfect send off for Spock Prime, as they call him. And then I didn't think much of the second movie, and I thought the third one was fun again, a return to form. But the shows I couldn't get into Discovery, and I'll try again someday. I like Pike from what I've seen of him on Discovery.
He's awesome. Season 2, if you haven't got into it, season 2 is heads and shoulders above season 1. They did a lot of course correcting and fixing some things. So
that's what I keep hearing.
Still some issues, but
And then with Picard, it's like that was another thing I wanted to love. I still want to love Picard, but you're not supposed to shake your head as you watch a show. You're supposed to like sit back and smile and sigh. And why are they? I mean, I watched the Plinkett review of Picard, and now I got a better understanding of why I don't love it, because it was what everyone was worried about going into it. Is this going to feel right?
Yeah.
And what did you think of Picard?
We were cautiously optimistic and really wanted to like it. We left each episode feeling depressed and let down. There's a few good things in it, obviously. And when we do our reviews on Trekyards, we're very fair. We're not a hater channel. We're not a shill channel, right? We call it like we see it with all Trek. There's good and bad in every Trek. Every episode has good and bad. And that's what we point out. Did we just find there was a lot more bad in Picard than good? But it does have its moments. And speaking of that feeling after you watch it, shaking your head, as you said, Lower Decks is giving us, like, you feel revitalized, you feel energized, you got the references, you got most of the Easter eggs, you think. Lower Decks has been a godsend for Trek, and especially after the last 2 series. So I don't know if you're watching Lower Decks, but check it out.
I haven't seen it yet, but everyone's recommending it, and I got to check it out because I love animation. Animation for me is the pinnacle. I'll always stand on that soapbox and say, stop wanting movies. Why are movies the brass ring? I say animation should be the brass ring. And the Filmation Star Trek show is awesome. The old one with all the original voice actors, even though they aren't sitting in the same room. That's the one thing that I always notice whenever I'm watching those, like, yeah, you can sort of tell they're not playing off of each other, especially Shatner is just, what's my next line?
Yeah, well, he was doing other stuff when they filmed that. He was recording those lines in his hotel room when he was doing like Broadway and stuff. So
I wouldn't be surprised.
They were never together.
Surprised if he was like doing a play and recording the lines. Like if he was like, "Alas, poor Yorick, Spock. What is that? I knew him, Horatio."
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there what's the most recent Trek merchandise that you've been impressed by?
The Eagle Moss line of ships. Eagle Moss has done some really Hero Collector, as it's also known. They've been doing some fantastic stuff, and we do reviews for them. They kind of sponsor the channel by supplying us with the models for free, which is fantastic. We just do the reviews for them, and yeah, they are impressing me time and time and time again. I mean, you got some issues with the window placement, sometimes a little bit misaligned, stuff like that, but they're making course corrections as they go, and their XL line of ships is glorious. They're doing Star Trek Online ships now, and they are just getting better and better. And if anybody's into Star Trek ships, I recommend looking at Eagle Moss. Some of them might be a little pricey, but check out the reviews because some of them are worth it. Other ones, not so much. So
I was looking at getting a Voyager ship, and because there are so few out there. The Playmates one is a little pricey now, but Eagle Moss was one of the ones I looked at because I didn't want something just a little die-cast thing, some size to it. So the Eagle Moss one looks really nice, and it's nice that they also come with like a book or a magazine extra little thing to them as well. Are those plastic or die-cast?
Both. There's a mix of both in each one. Like usually the main hull is metal, and then the nacelles and stuff will be plastic.
It's always nice when you get a little die cast in, any sort of collectible or model or thing. You get a little bit of heft to it. Yeah. And speaking of die cast, back to the 80s, Transformers.
Huge Transformers fan.
Yeah, I remember you sent me a picture of the exclusive Canadian Pepsi Optimus Prime.
Yes.
A while back, which used to be in your collection.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge kid. I had a lot of G.I. Joe toys. I was a huge G.I. Joe fan. But I didn't have a lot of the Transformers toys. I had more of the G.I. Joe toys. Now, as an adult, I have a lot more Transformers toys than G.I. Joe stuff because I've managed to make up the lapses in my toy collecting from when I was younger. So, yeah, huge Transformers fan, huge G.I. Joe fan, He-Man, Thundercats, you name it, I'm there with you. Like, I love watching your channel. You just really bring things to life with the way you do your little animations, and I really want to see your toy room sometime. And when I find out you were like an hour away, I'm like, oh my god, I got to meet up with this guy sometime.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And then the whole thing happened, and you got to kind of retreat and not hang out with people or have them over and stuff like that. So that's happened with quite a few people. I've been the only visitor to the 80s Toy Museum for a while now, but hopefully the world gets back to normal. I almost feel like was there a Star Trek episode about this whole thing, and how did they sort this whole thing out?
That's a good question. I've been kind of wondering that myself, and I can't recall anything specifically like that, but there's got to be some kind of episode that comes close. I just can't think of it offhand, so...
Bones would figure this out.
Oh yeah, we would have been done by now.
Well, you fool! All you need to do is this. It's so stupid an ape could figure it out.
Have a mint julep. There you go. That's the cure.
Wouldn't that be funny if that's the cure?
I would love that.
Or the vaccine is just a good old fashioned mint julep. What are some of your favorite Joe toys? And I think it's cool to be talking to a fellow Canuck who grew up on G.I. Joe 2. Yeah. A lot of Americans that I've chatted with over the last few years, they're a little surprised that a Canuck goes Yo Joe and waves the Canadian flag. And I love how G.I. Joe is all about patriotism and USA. And some folks outside of the USA don't get it. They're like, only Americans can love America. I'm like, no, they're the real American hero. I never wanted the packaging to say real Canadian hero.
Yeah. Well, that being said, all of our toys had the Canadian flag on them as opposed to the American flag.
Isn't that weird? Like the
Yeah.
Canadian flag and Canada, it would actually
Yep.
say on any GI Joe American toy, if it said United States, like across the front of the Wolverine or whatever, it would say Canada here, but the box still said Real American Hero.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Which I guess North America.
Yeah, I never made the distinction as a kid. I just thought it was great. Like I have a mix of Canadian and American GI Joe stuff, and I've got like a lot of the bigger vehicles. Like I got the Killer Whale, I've got the Headquarters, the Cobra helicopter, or the Dragonfly. I mean, I didn't collect a lot of a lot of Cobra stuff, which is weird. I collected more of the good guys stuff, and I had very few actual Cobra figures, which is a shame because I wish I would have got more of the Cobra vehicles because they're kind of cool.
But yeah, as a little kid, you have limited budget, and you're gonna, if you got any extra cash, you're gonna spend it on the heroes instead of the villains, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the situation, I think. Yeah. I still got all that stuff from my childhood. It's all in bins underneath the stairs there. I just don't have room to display it right now because I got my Transformers out and my Star Trek, right? So
as one of the definitive Trek guys on YouTube, what do you think of the space contingent of GI Joe, like the Defiant, the Crusader, and Star Brigade?
Star Brigade. Yeah, I don't know if you ever watch Hooded Cobra Commander 788, but I joined him for one of his Space Brigade reviews, and yeah, it's a little odd. It's a little odd.
Does anyone love Star Brigade? There's people who like it, but is anyone like passionate?
No, I don't think so. I think it was Hasbro's attempt to get into the whole Star Wars thing,
the sci-fi
expand. Yeah, the Defiant's a cool vessel for sure, but it never really worked for me when I was growing up to have GI Joe in space. By that point, I think I was getting out of it too, because I was like the '90s. Mid 90s when that started, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, just never really got into the space aspect of it.
Yeah, same here, which is weird. Like, you can be a huge sci-fi fan and look at the Defiant and go, or Star Brigade and go, that's not what G.I. Joe is.
Exactly.
It's exactly as if there was a line of Playmates Star Trek toys that had camouflage.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what Trek is.
It's like in the Enterprise, the Mako Special Forces guys that were on board for a while. They're the G.I. Joe of Star Trek.
Yeah. It's like, okay, why don't you just stick with what brought you to the dance?
Yeah.
But the Defiant, I don't know if you've seen any, in-depth reviews on them. There's a great one from Kevin, otherwise known as Form BX 256. Sorry if I'm not getting the number.
257?
Yeah. Kevin, Form BX.
I know who you mean, yeah.
he did a fantastic review of the Defiant, and I never knew this until I saw his review, that there's some Trek-inspired stuff in there, like in the bridge, and there's a transporter, and there's like a bunch of actual Star Trek places on like the booster and in the shuttle too. So I never realized that. Like, it's one thing to just have a NASA space shuttle, which is kind of boring to me, but when you incorporate the Star Trek aspects to it, I'm like, now that is really cool. Mm-hmm. I can just imagine Payload leaning, to the side like Riker or Kirk and going full speed ahead.
Gotta have his leg up on something too.
Yeah, countdowns at the console going, I'm giving it all she's got, Captain.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's good. Now you got to do a episode about that.
Well, if I ever get my hands on a Defiant, I don't think it'll ever happen, because of cost and because of desire. I mean, if I really need to want something if it's big, and I don't think I'll ever get a Defiant just because I'm kind of like, I don't know, I could use a Defiant, and that's not how you get a Defiant added to your collection.
Well, never say never. I mean, you mentioned the Voyager Eagle Moss. I might have one or two extras, including an XL, that you might find coming your way. Who knows? Oh,
much appreciated there. if hypothetically in some alternate Calvin universe that happens. So what's going on with Star Trek these days? Just veering off a little bit from the toys, but like I heard Quentin Tarantino is trying to get a movie made, and man, I haven't seen a Tarantino movie in 10 or 15 years. At one point, I think it was the first Kill Bill, I walked out of it and I just went, I think I'm done.
Mm.
I don't like what this guy puts to film. I don't like the like absolute utter almost, this I guess kind of sound prudish of me, but it's like violence to the porn level. It's just like,
Yeah.
what does this do for the story? I mean, I don't have a problem with violence in anything. I love the Sergio Leone trilogy, the Dollars trilogy,
Hmm.
but I just, I always finish a Tarantino movie going, this was all about showing the absolute awfulness of the world and not just like watching it, but going, cool, so awful. Give me more.
Hmm.
But him doing Trek, I just can't. I imagine Roddenberry like throwing the Earth's axis off with the centrifugal force of the spinning in his grave,
That's great.
or
Great.
or if he's like orbiting, his ashes are orbiting the planet. Like it's
Uh,
gonna affect us how badly he's gonna be spinning if Tarantino makes a Trek.
yeah, when I heard that, I was shocked to say the least. I wasn't sure how that would play out. They can't really blend a Tarantino style with Star Trek, in my opinion. But that's kind of fallen by the wayside. There's no more talk about that, so I don't think it's going to happen. Um, Star
That's the
Trek.
type of thing that I think even Spock would hear and go, "What the hey?"
Yeah, absolutely. There were rumors about a Star Trek 4, another Kelvinverse film for a while, but those have kind of dwindled and then peaked back up and then dwindled again. So I don't think there's anything going on with that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that starship may have sailed. I'd love
Yeah.
to see another one, but I don't, and there's a lot of Trek fans who are, I guess, kind of like us. We're like, they're good. They're
Mhm.
fine. They're nice. They're fun. The first one's really fun, but there isn't enough of that like passionate, yes, yes, more, more. We need a fourth one.
Yeah.
So if they do a fourth one, it'll just be okay. And then it's sad that, we lost Anton Yelkin, and
Yeah.
it's almost like maybe it's more fitting that they just called it a day after the third one, especially or also because Leonard Nimoy passed away and he had such a fitting tribute in
Hmm.
the third one send off. Is it's almost like it's not just the prequel crew, but it's also Nimoy's swan song, that whole trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the third one, Beyond, I think was the best of the Kelvin films. To be honest,
Yeah, I
felt the
really like.
most Star Trek to me. Plus, I got to see the Enterprise get destroyed, and I hated that Enterprise with a passion. I mean, that was one of the characters that was not reimagined well for that show. But that's a personal preference thing. Just not a fan of the show.
Yeah.
So.
What are some of your favorite ships in Trek?
Definitely the original Constitution class from the original series and the refit.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite, and it's interchangeable on the day. I think the refit's probably more of a favorite just because it's a little more refined. But just the simplicity of them, and what really speaks to me for a ship is that it can look good from every angle. No matter which way you put that ship, it looks good. Other ships like the Enterprise E look fantastic from certain angles, and then you move it and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Just some angles just don't work. So the
It's like the
Enterprise.
Millennium Falcon. I've
Yeah.
always felt the Millennium Falcon and Slave One, a lot of Star Wars ships are exactly like that. Like the Falcon, for the longest time, before I was really into Star Wars, I wondered, why is this cool? Why is this ship cool? Oh, it's the Falcon. It's Han Solo. Later on, I realized, well, it's Han Solo's ship. That's why it's cool.
Yeah.
But it's a hamburger with two French fries and an olive stuck on the side. Like that's how he designed it. He's
Yeah.
having lunch.
Yeah.
Would look like a cool ship. Stuck two fries in a burger and an olive on the side. There's your ship.
Well,
Gary
I mean,
Kurtz is like,
I don't mind the Falcon design, but the asymmetrical designs are, they take some getting used to.
B-wing.
B wing, not a fan of the B wing. Never been a fan of the B wing.
I love the gyroscope and cockpit of it, but
Hmm.
that was another one before I got into Star Wars and got used to it and played some of those awesome computer games. The B-wing was just like, why is it a B-wing? Well, it looks like a blade. I'm like, oh, T-wing maybe, but
I thought the same thing. Don't worry. But yeah,
What are some of your favorite Trek games? Because I've wanted to find a great Trek game. I've never really been able to get into one.
Depends what you like. If you like kind of first-person shooters, like the Elite Force games were great. Elite Force 1 and 2.
Was that for?
They were for the PC. I think they have Elite Force for the PlayStation 2 as well. But yeah, those are first-person shooter games like a Voyager. They take place on Voyager as well, so I think you'd really like them. But as for ship-based games, which most Star Trek games kind of are, unfortunately, Starfleet Command Volume 2 is great. Like the Starfleet Command series is good as a whole, but Volume 2 is the best one out of them all, I think.
For what system?
It is for the PC as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No Super NES classics.
No, nothing I can think of. Like Starfleet Command is based on the old tabletop game Starfleet Battles, which me and my brother played all the time. So just a starship combat simulator.
Yeah, I saw a VR one a while back.
Bridge Crew?
Yeah, Bridge Crew. How's that?
Play that all the time live on my channel. It's great. It's great once you get into it, and you have to have the VR. You can play it in without VR and with just the controller, but to get VR and the wands, it's fantastic. It's really great.
And you can go on the original bridge in
Yep.
that game, right? Man,
Yep.
I'd love to do that, especially after burning through so many of the original Trek that we did on our channel here. I was doing reviews with my wife, and we tapped out, I think, halfway through season 3. We got to the episode where Kirk is slapping himself. What was that one? Othello's Children or something like that. And we were like, okay, that's the end of the road. We'll go back and finish it someday, but man, that we got warned, and the warnings never prepare you.
Yeah. No, Bridge Crew is great, especially like the TOS bridge. As you can imagine, nothing's labeled. So, but you can. There's an option to turn on labels that float above the buttons, so you know what everything does. And after a while, you memorize it, and it's great. I can play every station, like engineering, helm, tactical, captain, and you know what everything does, and it's great.
And you just sit there with VR goggles and just you're doing this. And playing basically episodes from the show. Like it's not just space battles and stuff. It's also investigation and exploration.
Yeah, there's scanning and things like that. Yeah, it's more battle based, obviously, because that's kind of the nature of the beast. But yeah, I wish they'd come up with a second one where you can go to planets and stuff, but they don't have that right now.
I'd love to check that out. Also wanted to ask you about what do you think about the 6-inch the 6th scale 12-inch, like the dolls they used to be called, figures. Is it Quantum Mechanics doing them? They did a Picard. I think they did a Spock as well. Are you at all into the 12-inch figures?
Not really, no. I find with 12-inch, with that scale, I prefer things like droids. Like I've got a C-3PO in that size and an R2-D2. I'm a huge fan of droids from every franchise, but huge Astromech fan. So yeah, the 12-inch, because they're so scaled up, like, and they have cloth, fabric clothing and stuff, I find it's a little bit off-putting if it doesn't look right. Yeah. And with a droid, you can't really mess that up, so I don't really have any figures that are that size.
Yeah, the proportions are hard to get. Hot Toys has done a great job of basically doing what Mattel has been doing with Barbie for years. They've thinned the figure body down so that the clothes sit properly. Before that, like with G.I. Joe, the figures were too bulky even with no clothes on. And so if you want an actual nice kind of statue looking thing that just happens to be wearing cloth clothes, it doesn't look right. So I think some of the 12-inch new Trek figures look great. It's just I look at them and I'm like, I don't know, man. Star Wars looks great in 12-inch scale. Star Trek, it's like it doesn't have that kinetic energy that Star Wars has. I see a Han Solo and I just expect him to burst into a shooting pose or something, or Luke with his lightsaber. And Picard just stands there, right? Picard was never about the look. Picard was about what he says and what he does. Yeah,
McFarlane Toys, yeah.
He just stands there. It's more about how he gets out of tough situations instead of his fashion sense.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's why I think the this size, like the 6-inch, like the Black Series for Star Wars, those ones I've got a bunch of those. Those are, I think, just the nice middle ground there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Literally middle ground.
And you're into Star Wars as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
You remember the days back when you weren't supposed to be into both of them?
Yeah, well, I remember in high school I never told anybody I was a Star Trek fan because I was already a nerd and got picked on as it was, so I didn't need to make it worse, you know.
Did you ever imagine we'd see the day where it's basically a language where people quote both of them? You know, like not just Star Wars, but live long and prosper and make it so.
Yeah, no, I never thought I'd see the day, but we definitely inherited the earth.
Definitely. I was just going to say, like, there was a typo in the good book, and it should say the geek shall inherit the earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So talking about Star Wars for a second, because I think it's just interesting to talk to a Star Trek guy about Star Wars. What's your favorite Star Wars? Like either movie or, show?
Absolutely, hands down, Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of default answer for a lot of people, and I'm not just defaulting to that. That has been my favorite. It's got the best vehicles, and as you know, with me, vehicles and ships are where it's at. So it's got those best vehicles, the best story. Ends on a downer, which is great, just like real life.
But with hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So just there's so much cool stuff in Empire that it's the one I would pick if I had to pick just one.
How about The Mandalorian?
I am loving The Mandalorian, actually, and we're going to be reviewing those. We reviewed all of season 1 as they came out, and that's great. I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it too. The Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni seem to be totally getting what Star Wars is all about, and it makes you wonder why they don't get the keys to the kingdom after doing such an amazing first season of their show.
Absolutely.
It's kind of funny how they've sort of pulled the plug on the movies now. It used to be like every week we'd get new news. You know, this guy's directing. This guy's been fired from directing. We've got a new director. This guy's the star. This guy's been fired from. And now, like, there hasn't been a peep about a Star Wars movie, not just because of everything that's going on with, the shutdowns and stuff, but it just seems like even before that, they said, well, we're going to put Star Wars on the shelf because the toxic fandom was just, you couldn't do anything without people immediately hating it. Like before it's even in production, we hate it. It's the worst thing ever.
Well, the same thing is going on with Star Trek, unfortunately. A lot of people are really not watching or just hating on Lower Decks because they've kind of made up their mind that New Trek sucks. And Lower Decks it's a gift. It's like a love letter to the fans because the guy in charge, Mike McMahon, who we've interviewed for our channel, is a huge fan of the show. And there's such great references and just Easter egg upon Easter egg in that show. It's made for the fans to be able to see all these little things.
So it takes place on the Discovery ship, right?
Lower Decks, no, it takes place on a ship called the USS Cerritos, and it's about 5 years after the events of Nemesis. So it's a post-Nemesis movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, now I'm sold because prime timeline, and I like Nemesis. I'm one of the few. I'm the other guy who likes.
I was just saying that 2 days ago on another podcast that I don't mind Nemesis. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and it kind of gets a bad rap. So,
yeah, it's to me, it's. I know a lot of people love Wrath of Khan. It really stuck with them. Many moments in Wrath of Khan, needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and Khan. But Nemesis is the one that haunts me in a good way. That final meeting between Picard and Data. Just like he sticks the transporter badge on him. Goodbye. Like, I'll never forget that moment ever. And just the wind, got taken out of my sails and kaboom. And it was, it wasn't like Wash dying in Firefly. That sucked. That's how you do it wrong. But that's how you give a character the absolute perfect send off. I thought that was the perfect way to write, have Data ride off into the sunset. That was like Optimus Prime level of worthy death of a great character. Yeah. Never had a problem with the end of Nemesis. And then I started reading the first Titan book, Star Trek Titan, because to me that's the continuation of Nemesis. Riker getting his own ship and loving what I've read so far of Titan. But knowing Lower Decks is a continuation after Nemesis, I'm like, I'm all over that. I thought it was just the Lower Decks of the Discovery. So it's like, oh man, I got to deal with the new.
See, now you got to watch it. You got to let me know what you think, because I'm really eager to find out now.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to hunt it down and definitely check it out. Man, I'm excited about that now, actually, because that's the one time period that I wish they would do more with. Other than the first JJ movie, we got a glimpse. And then there was a comic that was setting up the movie. It was like a prequel to the JJ movie. We got to see Captain Data, and Captain LaForge and all that. I wish we could have seen that on screen.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm there with you.
And what's the one Star Trek collectible ship or otherwise that they've never made, and you're hoping one day that they make?
Well, that's the problem. They're making a lot of the stuff nowadays. There was the little this style figure. I think it was by Erdl. That they did for the motion picture. They made a bridge set. They made a bridge set, which was like that flimsy plastic. There was also a Vulcan shuttle that was like, the warp sled from the motion picture that was in advertising that could dock to the actual bridge set that they never made. I think that would be fantastic to have finally. But other than that, I mean, my holy grail would definitely be would have been the South Bend Enterprise, the one that was reconfigurable. But I actually got that like 2 years ago. So I kind of got a piece that I've been looking for most of my life finally, and it's a mint condition. So I don't know if there's anything else that I've missed out on. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I was just going to ask you what your holy grail is of your entire collection, Trek or not. And so that would be it.
Yeah, I think that would be it. I also have my 350 scale TOS Enterprise that I built myself with lighting. I think that's one I've always wanted, one that big, and to build it myself, my first lit model, and it's really great.
How big is it? Just show with your hands what scale.
Well, 34 inches, so 3 feet.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's up in my ready room upstairs where I do a lot of my filming.
So you could almost fit William Shatner's ego in that thing if you had a figure to scale.
There you go. Yeah,
the figure would fit. Check your ego at the door. Shatner is just amazing. There's nothing quite like him in all of entertainment. I mean, is there anyone who is so loved and yet so?
Yeah, I hear you.
We love you, despite everything. Yep.
I actually did a captain's log on Shatner like 3 years ago. It says, "What's the deal with William Shatner?" Because I like the guy, I like his character, but at the same time, some of the stuff he does, I'm like, what is wrong with you, man?
Stuff like today, though, seems tame in comparison to some of the stuff that you're hearing about some of the people. Like, I remember growing up and hearing things about Shatner and going, "That's not cool. Don't treat Sulu like that." Stuff like that. Man, if you can upset Leonard Nimoy, something's not right with you. But now these days, like, Shatner seems like a really, really cool guy, and even things from the past in retrospect, I'm like, that's not so bad compared to some of the stuff going on these days. But the burning question is, toupee? Is it a toupee or not?
Oh God! So my brother used to always bug me about that, saying, "Look, you can see where his hair's grown out and the toupee hasn't." I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought he was just doing it because my brother likes pushing my buttons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it probably is a toupee.
I cannot not see it on the new Blu-rays. The glorious high def restored. And I love the Blu-rays for being able to see all the nuances that I couldn't see before when it used to just be on TV.
Yeah.
WUTV, Buffalo 29. I don't know if you got that channel out there in London. Yeah. But back when it was just on TV, I was like, who cares? Like, watch the show. And now when it's in glorious high def on your 50-inch or bigger big screen TV, like, I cannot stop looking at his hairline because thanks to websites like William Shatner's toupee. I'm like, damn you.
God.
I can't not see it. Like, I wish I could focus on the performance and the writing, and I'm just looking at that's looking a little thick there.
Maybe that's why he overacted the way he did to distract from it.
Yeah, but I gotta say, like, if it is a toupee, I'm not entirely convinced in that era anyway that it was a 2K. If it is the most spectacular makeup job ever because it is just how did they get it that perfectly blended in and undetectable? And we have the HD footage to go back and look at it bigger than it was ever intended to be, and it's like, well, even if it is, it's a work of art. We need to give just due to whoever put it on.
He's not just a hair club client. He's now the president. He should have bought the company in that case. Yeah, I don't know if it's been all along, but it certainly looks like it sometimes.
Do you ever want to see Captain Kirk back? I mean, played by William Shatner. I mean, the character.
If done properly, I guess. See, I mean, Generations gets a bad rap too for being a bad movie, but I really enjoyed Generations. I don't think we need him back, honestly. I just think anything they do is not going to live up to what we expect. So,
it would be kind of like an afterthought. Like we've done everything, and then some more stuff, and then some more stuff, and then he did that. Like, was it an Oscars appearance with Seth MacFarlane? I think so. Which I thought was great too. I'm like, that's the
on the screen he was Captain Kirk. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
but that was the perfect final image of Captain Kirk. I was like, now I'm satisfied. The whole it was fun. Oh my, like, I don't know. Okay, but seeing him at the Oscars, I'm like, okay, that's a better final memory of Captain Kirk, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree.
I want to finish up here with how would you, they say in wrestling, book, how would you write, how would you imagine a Star Wars, Star Trek crossover? Because that used to be not a possibility at all in the old days. And now I am 100% sure we're going to see a Star Trek, Star Wars crossover in the next 10 years. Because everything is crossing.
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, there's been lots of stuff online with the ship battles, where the ships cross over through some black hole or something, and are battling Battlestar Galactica and Deep Space Nine, or like Babylon 5, all those crossovers.
Yeah, the question is why? Why would it happen? Because there's a lot of people, it seems to me, like just it happening is enough. Batman versus Superman. Why? Who cares? Fight. And that's enough. But I'm just sitting here going, but why? Like the Van Wilder, but why?
Yeah. But why? Yeah. I don't know. I personally wouldn't want to see it. I mean, one of the best crossovers I think that they've done is the whole, what is it? Indiana Jones uncovers. No. There's a crossover with Han Solo and Indiana Jones, where I think they crash on Earth, and Indiana Jones finds the wreckage of the ship, and turns out Chewbacca turned into Sasquatch or something.
Oh man,
that's a neat crossover idea. But or all the dreams, all the Indiana Jones movies are actually dreams when Han Solo's in carbonite, something like that.
I like that.
But I don't know about Star Trek and Star Wars. I'm sure they'd come up with something. They crossed Star Trek with Doctor Who in the comics, so I mean anything's possible in sci-fi, right?
Did you like that?
I didn't really read it, but I thought it was interesting. The Cybermen and the Borg, the similarities there. I
think the Borg is the easy way out. Like you can just have the Borg literally show up anywhere, and they'll have the same effect on everybody. Like the Borg showing up on Kashyyyk or Endor or whatever. Yeah. Luke and Han having to deal with the Borg. Like it's the easy one, right? But it's a weird one. Like how would the crew of the Enterprise, either the original or the D, how would they interact if they ran into the Millennium Falcon? It's like, well, why would there be an issue? They wouldn't fight, I always say. It would be like the Empire, that's a different story.
Yeah. It'd be like the Outrageous Okuda, that episode of TNG where there's like that Han Solo character, the smuggler guy. It'd be that kind of situation. But yeah, if they ran into the Imperials, it's the cute little thing of beam a photon torpedo onto the bridge of their ship. Yes. It would be a pretty simple battle.
That? Get it out of here. I'll fly it.
That's good. Yeah. So
just see Data turn around. The threat has been neutralized, Captain. Wonderful. Engage engines. Like that was a 2-minute crossover.
yeah. Well, I mean, they've crossed over TNG with X-Men in the comic and in the novel form, which I thought was a little weird. I never read that one either. But I would love to see a scene with Data talking to C-3PO. You know, that would work for me.
Yeah, it's the conversations that I'd like to see. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full movie with a plot, you know, like beginning, middle, end type of thing. I want to see the little conversations, like just how they would interact with each other. I'd love to see Riker have a conversation with Han Solo. You know, like just Han Solo docks at you know, at some dockyard, whatever. For some reason, he's on 10 forward. I want to go get a drink, and he sits down, and then there's Riker who steps over the chair. Hello, stranger.
Yeah.
It's like a battle of low, bassy voices. What are you doing around these parts? Just getting a drink. What about you? Like it just the clash of, you know, clash of personalities. And I'm like, well, what is that supposed to mean? I'm like, doesn't mean anything. What do you think it means? All of a sudden they're throwing things off the table. I don't like your tone, mister. Well, it's the same as yours.
I don't like it.
We don't need a full movie. It's just the 5-minute conversation. And, you know, I think that should be an option too. Like going back to why does everything have to be a movie? Why can't it just be animated? Yeah. Going back to Lower Decks, like those are shorts, right?
Well, Lower Decks is a half-hour show. Yeah.
Oh, half-hour show. Yeah, even if it was like just 10-minute animated or 5-minute animated clips and stuff like that, that should be perfectly acceptable alternative as well.
Yeah, that should be something we could. It's like a what if, the what if comics.
Yeah. Those went from total like, okay, that's kind of neat, but I don't really feel like reading it, to maybe that's what the entertainment business should be mining now, since everything has been done. Yeah. And everything has been being redone, and you know, a lot of fans seem to think not faithfully, not in the spirit of the originals. They're not love letters to fans of the originals. Then maybe we should be going with what if stuff that doesn't count.
Yeah, so that'd be a great idea.
So it's not so much of an emotional investment for people, and that they're not so bent out of shape when they don't get what they want. Like I'm always saying, man, if your hobby makes you upset, you need a new hobby. It's not a hobby, more addiction. So it's time to drop that addiction and find yourself a new hobby.
Yeah, that's great.
Any parting thoughts for the viewers out there?
No, just keep watching Michael Mercy. He does some really great stuff. You already know that because you're watching.
And check out Trekyards. If you've never seen Trekyards, you can find them by searching Trekyards. So you're on YouTube. You also got social media everywhere else, right? Twitter and...
Yep. Twitter, Discord, Facebook. We got a few Facebook pages. So just type in Trekyards, all one word, and you'll find us. If you're into Star Trek at all, check us out on YouTube. And if you're into ships and tech specifically, then you really need to check us out because we love that stuff.
When's the next drinking video? The one where you take a shot?
That'll probably be, well, when we're done season 4 of TNG. So I'm not sure, because now we've got Lower Decks that we're reviewing every week. We're going to have The Mandalorian, and then right after Lower Decks is over, we're going to Discovery season 3. So mid-December, we'll be done Star Trek, new Star Trek. So who knows?
Well, if you ever decide to have a guest on for one of those things, I'll take a shot of orange juice every time.
Absolutely.
So, I'll be in a compromised state by the end of it as well, but I'll be more like,
vitamin C,
acid reflux.
Yeah, that works.
Well, Stuart, thanks so much for finding the time. Thanks for working with me on the schedule. I know it took a while, but it's awesome to finally get you on here and talk to you a bit about all things space and beyond. So I hope we get to talk again really soon. And looking forward to seeing more stuff on Trekyards. And just thanks, man. Thanks. It's been awesome chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Like I said, it was great to find another Southwestern Ontario YouTuber, and I'm glad we could work together. So thank you very much.
And hopefully when the world gets back to normal, we'll be able to, interact face to face. Conventions. I know London has collectors conventions. I'd love to check out one of those sometime too. Hopefully we'll be able to do that sometime soon.
Absolutely.
So thanks again, Stuart. Thanks to everyone out there for watching. Hope you enjoyed this Trek Talk, Toy Talk. And I guess there is no other appropriate sign-off for this particular episode than live long and prosper. Third mistake.